What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are back and we are going to take a look at the Philadelphia Flyers today. The Flyers have had a rough start to the season. The way things ended last year obviously left a bitter taste in the fans of Flyers fans, but there was also the sense of optimism that with the way they played for 70 to 75% of the season last year, if they were able to do that on a more consistent basis this year, have injury help. Hopefully, they didn't get injured as much. We're going to talk about that in a second. And Matvei Michkov coming into the organization, the Flyers had expectations that maybe they would be where they were at the very least for last season and fighting for a playoff spot. But the way things have unfolded for the Flyers this year so far leaves a lot to be desired and a lot of people questioning whether the Flyers are going in the right direction. They had two key injuries the last couple of weeks, really since the second week of November. So the last 3 weeks have been rough on the Flyers, but they got Jamie Drysdale and Sam Ersson back the other day, and we are going to see if the tide will turn for the Philadelphia Flyers heading into the end of this year, going into 2025. So let's take a look at the Flyers, because the Flyers have had a season of, I think a lot of fans are kind of stuck with trying to figure out, is this a problem that we need to really evaluate, as in, like, is this a Tortorella issue, or is this the reality of the situation, which I'm leaning more toward it being the fact that this is just a team that's going through a lot of growing pains. This is not the Philadelphia Flyers team that we've seen the last couple of years, and that's a good thing. I think we're starting to see some of the younger players that are on this team developing. You have guys like Drysdale and Michkov that have come into the organization, younger talent that's going to lead this team into the future. But I think it's just frustrating because a lot of these games, especially the Bruins game last weekend, and we could talk about that forever, about how Michkov was pushed around a little bit. And that's why losing guys like Nicolas Deslauriers definitely hurts. But for the Philadelphia Flyers, this is still a team that can go out there and compete. This is a team that's going to go on a nightly basis and give everything they have. And I think that's what's really exciting about this team, is when they're playing at their best, they can beat teams in the NHL on any given night. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They can beat some of the best hockey teams in the league. We saw what they did a couple weeks ago on Black Friday against the New York Rangers. That was a huge game for them. They really showed a lot of the league just what this team is capable of. Now, they've also had a couple of duds since then, and it's one of those things for the Flyers that if they really want to stay in this playoff chase in the Eastern Conference, the lead that they might have had over teams earlier on in the season has quickly been diminished to the point where they find themselves toward the bottom of the standings in the Metro. And it's a competitive division. We all know that. But this is a very competitive division. And for the Flyers, you really can't afford to have a pretty big losing streak. And right now, they're on a 3-game losing skid. And what sucks about that is when you look at really since that game in November, but what is that? November 7th to November 11th, they were winning a lot of games. So they were on, what was that? They won 4 of 5 games in the beginning of November, and they went on a 2-game losing streak. And then they kind of pulled it back together where they won 4 of 5 again, and now they're on a 3-game losing skid again. So it's one of those things for the Flyers where it just seems like you don't really know what version of the Flyers you're going to get. And a lot of that, again, is because of the lack of depth on this team, the lack of true skill on this team. And that's kind of what I want to get to is, this is a team, like I said, when they're playing at their best, which is not consistent enough, but when they're playing at their best, the Philadelphia Flyers can compete with some of the best, not only in the Eastern Conference, but in the National Hockey League. But then you also have the other version of this team, which we've seen over the last couple of days here since the Panthers game, a 7-5 loss to the Panthers, a 4-3 loss in overtime against the Boston Bruins, a 4-2 loss against the Utah Hockey Club. Now, I guess you could say the bright side in all of this, from now till the end of this year, there is a lot of games against teams in the Western Conference that aren't that good. And this is a good opportunity for the Flyers to pick up points where they really need it. And even this next coming game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, which when you guys watch this video will have happened last night, but it's happening today when I post this video, or when I make this video. They're playing the Blue Jackets last night for you guys. They're going to be playing the Red Wings. They haven't been all that great either. And then they play Minnesota. That's going to be a tough game. The Wild are really good, but that'll be a good litmus test for them. So hopefully they win the 2 next games against Columbus and Detroit. Again, no guarantees, but those are games that are very winnable for the Flyers. And that game in Minnesota is going to be big for them. That's a 2 o'clock game on Sunday. That's a matinee game in Minnesota. That's an opportunity for the Flyers to kind of figure out where they stand. And then the rest of the month, it's kind of a good schedule, really up until the new year. The rest of their schedule after that Minnesota game, they have 3 days off before they have to head to Detroit to take on the Red Wings. Then they play the Kings and the Blue Jackets. So they play the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings 2 of their next 6 games each. So they play 4 games against those 2 hockey teams, home and away. Then they take on the Pittsburgh Penguins, who've also been very much struggling in their division, but that's a rivalry game. So that's going to be a good game. And that's the day before Christmas Eve. So that's a big, big game in Pittsburgh. Then they head for that West Coast road trip, which normally is something that you'd be like, uh-oh, there's reason for concern here. But when you look at the teams that they're playing and where they are in the standings, there is definitely winnable games here before they come back to start the new year, where they could be actually playing some pretty good hockey to start the new year. And that's where I'm talking about teams like Anaheim, LA, San Jose. And then they end the road trip on some tougher games. They have to play the Vegas Golden Knights on January 2nd, and then January 5th, they play the Toronto Maple Leafs. So basically from December 23rd up until January 5th, they are going to have a lot of road games in the month to end the month of December. Now, obviously, that's not that's not the nicest schedule, but they will have a couple of days off to celebrate Christmas and things like that. So they are going to break that up a little bit after the Penguins game. And like I said, the 28th to January 5th is really where they're going to play a lot of road games. And then, like I said, that the second of a back-to-back against the Maple Leafs, so they end their big, long road trip against the Leafs, and then they come back home that first game to play the Maple Leafs, which is not going to be easy. Then they have to play the Dallas Stars, another tough game, the Florida Panthers. So you can see how very easily going, from the end of the year to immediately when the new year begins, it's going to be a totally different change of schedule for the Flyers. So it's really important that they do well at the beginning of that West Coast road trip, because those are the games that are winnable for them. The Pittsburgh Penguins, Ducks, Kings, Sharks. If there's a way they could split those first 4 games, ideally you win 3 of those 4, that is huge for the Flyers. But you're quickly in a situation where they are losing ground in their division, and they will have an opportunity toward the end of January to build some of that back as well. They have 3 road games, all teams in the Metropolitan Division. They play the Blue Jackets, Islanders, and Devils all on the road. So those are going to be some critical games in the month of January for the Philadelphia Flyers, coming out of that kind of tough stretch against teams like the Panthers, Stars, Leafs, Golden Knights. Things are going to come quick for the Philadelphia Flyers. So it's one of those things. I have hope that the Flyers can still get back to the playoffs. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion this team is done. I think Sam Ersson, he's got a .900 save percentage so far. Jamie Drysdale's back in the lineup. Both those guys have been out, almost a month at this point. And their first game back with Utah wasn't the best, but I would contribute a lot of other factors as to why Flyers didn't do well in that game. And I think that a lot of people right now very happy with Matvei Michkov, right? He got ejected the other night. Shout out to him. And then he's signing autographs on his way off the ice. That is awesome. I love to see stuff like that. Nicolas Deslauriers is on the IR. Hopefully he'll be back soon. He's only been out for 4 days, and I think the Flyers already miss him a lot. And again, that Deslauriers absence, like I said, that game against Matvei Michkov, he might be a little bit more exposed, as now it kind of seems like that enforcer type of player that they have with him is kind of gone. And Travis Konechny leading the team in points. He's got 32 points this season. I know John Tortorella has been rough on him, saying he's not disciplined and things like that. But it's hard to be upset with a guy like that because he has been so good for them. But I think the reason he has so much expectation from Torts is to kind of keep him going and to not be complacent. So I understand why he's doing that. Michkov is basically a point-per-game player. He's already got 11 goals this season, 25 points in 26 games. He's going to be in the running for the Calder. I would love to see him win the Calder. That would be great to see. Sanheim's playing well. He's leading this team defensively for points. But then that's the problem is you're kind of looking at the rest of this team saying, where's the rest of the offense on the Philadelphia Flyers? You know, Owen Tippett has 15 points. He has only 8 goals, though. I'd like to see that be at least 10 to 12 goals, right? And it kind of seems like you're nitpicking, but every goal matters. And I'd like to see Tippett and Couturier, who Couturier has only got 15 points this season. He's basically a half a point per game. That is not characteristic of normal Sean Couturier. So hopefully he gets back to form there. Morgan Frost, especially Joel Farabee. It was nice to see him finally pot one in the other night. But again, he even said after the game he kind of wishes he didn't tip that puck in. He kind of regrets it because that would have been Nick Seeler's goal. But nonetheless, it's nice to see him get on the board. Hopefully that jump starts his offense. And I think there's more momentum to take from a goal from Joel Farabee than there is from Nick Seeler. Nothing against Nick Seeler, but you understand, right? We want to see Farabee kind of be scoring more consistently than Nick Seeler. And hopefully he's able to do that. Overall, there's a couple guys on this team that definitely have been struggling. I mean, you look at the plus minus, it's definitely a lot of minuses here. Owen Tippett, a -9. Bobby Brink, Joel Farabee. Scott Lawton's a -15. Very uncharacteristic for him. That's a guy that plays a very good two-way game. I'm not really sure what's going on there. Yegor Zamula, a -11. He's definitely not playing as well as you like to see as well. So it's just one of those things for the Flyers where there is potential with this team. We've seen it before. We saw it last season. We see it at points this season. But it's just got to be a little bit more consistent if the Flyers genuinely want to make a playoff run. Like I said, they're going to have an opportunity to make up some ground this month, the rest of this month here at the end of December, and then that three-game set in the middle of January is going to be huge for the Philadelphia Flyers. And they're going to have some litmus tests along the way. 2 games against the Florida Panthers, 2 games against the Dallas Stars. They play the Golden Knights on the road. They're going to have their chances to make up some ground and to see what they're capable of before that stretch. But let's look at those 3-game stretch. We'll come back and talk about the Flyers in mid-January and get an idea of just where this hockey team is right now. Guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you like this content, want to see more videos like it, make sure to like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. I'll see you guys again next time.